You ever open up a chest in the game and feel instant disappointment? You fought through 10 enemies, wasted half your potions, and what's waiting for you? A pair of boots you'll never wear? Or worse, random crafting materials that you don't even need. And then you look at your inventory and you realize it's just a digital junk drawer. Broken swords, moldy bread, armor pieces with tiny stat changes. At this point, you're less a hero and more a garbage collector. But here's the thing, it's not an accident. Games want to flood you with junk. There's a reason your backpack looks like a thrift shop, and once you see why, you'll never unsee it. So let's talk about loot. Why most of it is trash, what it does to how we play, and how it could actually be exciting again. Let's start with the obvious. The moment every gamer knows too well. Opening your inventory and realizing you've picked up way too much junk. In Skyrim, you finish a dungeon and you're holding 10 iron swords, 6 pairs of fur boots, and a wagon's worth of cabbage. None of it feels like treasure, it feels like weight. And now you're in a cave, stuck in a menu, dropping gear like a medieval garage sale, just so you can keep progressing through the cave. Starfield? Same deal, just in space. You clear a base and somehow your suit pockets are full of sliced sandwiches, pens, desk fans, and other useless junk. You're grabbing everything just in case until the encumbrance warning pops up and you're limping to the ship to dump cargo like an interstellar junk hauler. Half of it sells for pennies and rarely helps with base building, but it still eats at your carry weight and your time. Right now, I won't even play Starfield without the mod that removes the carry weight limitations. And then there are loot shooters like Borderlands or Diablo. These games drown you in weapons. 90% are instantly worse than what you already have, but you keep picking them up anyway because what if one stat is different? Suddenly you're staring at 20 nearly identical rifles comparing +1 fire damage versus +2 reload speed, and none of it actually matters. Loot is supposed to feel exciting, like a reward, but when every chest or enemy just hands you more junk, that thrill dies fast. So why do developers do this? Why not just give us meaningful loot in the first place? Because flooding you with junk is by design. Here's the trick. When you get 100 trash drops, that one legendary feels incredible. It's the same system slot machines use. Variable rewards. You don't know when you'll hit something good, so you keep pulling the lever. Or in this case, opening chests and killing mobs. Diablo built its entire identity on this. You fight through endless waves, get buried in loot, and every once in a while, bam, that orange glow, that unique item. And because you just sifted through mountains of trash, that one drop feels like winning the lottery. Destiny does it too. Borderlands especially. They brag about having millions of guns, but the truth is, most of those guns are boring reskins with tiny stat changes. The flood of junk isn't an accident. It's there to make a handful of exciting items feel special. And to be fair, some games have started dialing this back. The Division 2 eventually added targeted loot maps and full gear overhaul that made the grind smarter instead of messier. Diablo 4 also did something similar with their DLC, I think it was called Loot Reborn, where they tried to make items more meaningful and less, well, junk. And in my opinion, this did improve the experience in Diablo 4, but not enough to make it meaningful. Not every game treats loot this way though. Some actually make every item feel like it matters. Take Cyberpunk 2077. At launch, it had the same problem, a flood of identical pistols, jackets, and crafting scraps. But after updates, the game shifted towards giving loot more weight. Iconic weapons now feel distinct. They're now tied to characters or quests. They're not just a change in stats, they actually feel impactful, sometimes even part of the world. But it wasn't just the iconic weapons that had a pass. All weapons had a pass, and all systems were changed. Clothing no longer provided armor, but instead were just pretty much clothing. Cyberware now had a bigger impact than ever, and certain weapons changed how you played. For me, the most notable change was the cyberware change and the way that worked, because when this game first came out and I played it, I almost never visited a Ripper Dock. I didn't really need to, I didn't care. The only time I ever visited a Ripper Dock was when the story made me. And of course I made changes in those instances, but I didn't seek them out. Now that I'm going back and replaying post update 2.2, I visit a Ripper constantly. Sometimes I even seek them out to make my character not only stronger, but faster and more efficient in what he's doing. These changes dramatically changed the way people played the game and the way the game felt. And developers need to realize that loot alone basically can break or make the experience that you're trying to sell players. And then you have games like Elden Ring or Dark Souls. They don't bury you in loot. Instead, what you find is rare, usually unique, and it actually changes how you play. It's not about scrolling through dozens of copies of the same sword. It's about finding one weapon or piece of gear that feels significant. But then that brings us back to a game I mentioned earlier, The Division 2. Early on, it absolutely buried you in gear. Minor stat tweaks, endless comparisons, menus for days. The classic loot blur. But to Ubisoft's credit, they listened. Title Update 6 introduced targeted loot, so you could actually farm specific gear types in certain missions and zones that you wanted. Then Warlords of New York brought you Gear 2.0 with the recalibration library. This let you save the exact stats you wanted and apply them later instead of hoarding 10 near duplicates to get what you wanted. They even trimmed the overall drop quantity and made difficulty scale the quality, so higher challenges actually felt rewarding. The game still spits out a lot of items, sure, but it's more focused now than it ever was at launch. The difference is simple. In some games, loot is noise. It's junk. It's clutter. In others, it's a moment you remember. Here's the problem. All of this junk has a cost. And it's not just about menu clutter. First, it breaks immersion. Instead of feeling like an adventurer, you feel like a hoarder lugging around piles of garbage. Skyrim wants me to be the Dragonborn, but half the time I'm just running a used sword shop out of my pockets. Second, it wastes time. Constantly stopping to sort, scrap, sell, or dismantle gear is busy work. It's padding. It's not fun. And third, it kills the thrill of discovery. Finding a chest should be exciting. Instead, it's often disappointing. Studies on decision fatigue even back this up. When you're faced with too many meaningless choices, your brain just checks out. And that's exactly what happens when every loot drop is trash. Loot should make you feel powerful. Too much junk just makes you feel tired. So how do we actually fix this? Well, first, cut the clutter. Games don't need to bury us in dozens of slightly different swords or rifles. Give us fewer drops, but make them distinct. The Division 2 eventually figured this out. Instead of drowning you with junk, it added targeted loot and a recalibration library so you could actually chase the stats you want without filling your bag with trash. That's a smart way to reduce clutter while still keeping loot-driven design. Second, make loot purposeful. Even common stuff should tie directly into something I care about, and this is exactly where Starfield drops the ball. You're picking up sandwiches, coffee mugs, pens, all of this filler that clogs your backpack. It doesn't connect to anything meaningful. If those items actually tied into crafting systems or ship upgrades in a consistent, useful way, then suddenly grabbing them would feel intentional instead of busy work. Third, give loot identity. The best items aren't just bigger numbers, they're memorable. Cyberpunk 2077's iconic weapons are a perfect example. They're tied to characters or quests, and sometimes they even talk back to you. They're not just gun number 50, they're part of the story. That's what makes you hold on to them, even if the stat sheet says otherwise. Fourth, respect the player's time. If you're going to give duplicates, give us systems to make them meaningful. That's why the Division 2's recalibration library was so huge. It turned a frustrating grind into progress. Even if a drop wasn't perfect, it could still contribute to the build you're chasing. That's the kind of system that turns disappointment into investment. And finally, force real choices. Loot should sometimes mean giving up one thing to gain another. That tension is what makes an item powerful. Destiny 2 does this with its exotics. You can equip only one exotic weapon and one exotic armor piece at a time. Division 2 does this as well. That limitation makes your choice feel impactful. You're defining your playstyle, not just stacking stats. Loot doesn't have to be complicated, but it does have to matter. And the way to make it matter is less clutter, more purpose, stronger identity, and smarter systems with meaningful choices. All things games have shown can actually work when they're brave enough to trim the junk. At the end of the day, loot should feel rewarding. It should make you want to open the next chest, not dread another pile of garbage. The next time you play and crack open a chest, ask yourself, did you just find loot or did you just find junk? And feel free to let me know in the comments below. Anyway guys, that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, feel free to like and subscribe and let me know in the comments below which game you think does loot the best. Personally, I'm a big fan of the way the Division 2 changed their loot system and the grind, and made loot feel more meaningful and impactful, and made it even easier to work towards a particular build. Now, whether that build works or not is a different story, but you can now work towards it and try it out and know for yourself. And I really do like these changes, and I feel like more games should combine everything that we think as fans that games in the looter shooter genre have done right, and kind of put them all together and make a core system or core foundation. At least that's my opinion. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, again, don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you for watching. As always, I will see you next time. Hippo out. Eagles going to the Super Bowl, y'all.